assembly. I use the term interesting lightly. I'm going to talk about childcare. In Tennessee, we know that there is a childcare crisis, and it reflects in our workforce. It reflects in the ability for a two-parent household to be able to work, a one-parent household to be able to work. Right now, it costs $2.6 billion in lost wages because of this child care crisis. This week, I had a bill in committee that passed out to the calendar committee, which will, actually to finance, which will stop nonprofit child care centers from having to pay certain registration fees, but the real impact is they will not have to pay the tremendous fee to have an audit, because they really are trying to, in Tennessee, if there's a way that we can help parents be able to get to work and children to be able to go to some sort of facility, we have to be able to do that. Right now, child care costs more than college, estimated by TQEE. That is a staggering proposition. When I was in law school, one of the cases I did in the legal clinic, we talked about a woman who was not granted unemployment compensation because she quit her job because she wanted to take care of her two kids, because the cost of sending those kids to daycare would be more than what she was being paid. And that was 12 years ago. And she ended up winning her appeal because the court said, you're right, you would have to spend money working. You would literally be working just to pay for your child care. And so that's something that we have to change in this state. We say, my colleagues say that they're a pro-life state. They care about children. Every piece of legislation that has been controversial this session has been done to protect kids. But when you have actual things that you can do, making it easier for families to afford child care, making it easier for families to be able to send their kids to really good schools that are well funded, we seem to pass the buck. So I'm going to turn it over now to some of my colleagues that are going to talk about the other subjects. And then, like Brandon said, we'll open it up for general questions. I'm sure you guys have plenty. It's been a very interesting week.
Can I just say one word about okay, yeah. I just wanted to say that, giving $100 million, Governor Lee has decided to give $100 million to forced birth centers in our state, and finding out that he is actually on the board of one of these organizations really represents a conflict of interest. So I think that we see consistently in this state that our taxpayer dollars, those are our dollars, are being redirected towards organizations without the approval of Tennesseans, because Tennesseans overwhelmingly oppose this, and we really need to pay attention to what's happening with our tax dollars.
Again, thank you all for being here. We'll just speak a little bit on this voucher legislation that passed to the Senate today. Here again, we're in a situation where we're going to be taking even more funds from our public school system. We said this was going to happen when they passed the first legislation. They agreed that there would only be X number of students, it would only be X number of areas, and we knew then that they had a plan to expand this ESA program. And I was talking to someone this morning about this, and to the choice families that was here on yesterday, the impact that this is going to have on not only our traditional schools, but even our charter schools. And as you begin to take these funds from our schools, we will begin to see traditional public schools close again. If you look at the city of Memphis, we closed over 25 or more traditional public school systems. And now, with the expansion of this legislation, I can see that, it's going to really start to eat away at these funds. And it may seem like it's only 5 students here and 6 students there, but in the totality, when you start to add up funding year after year after year, but you're not able to change your formula for funding your school in terms of the maintenance, in terms of teacher-student ratio, in terms of cafeteria workers, and all the things it takes to run those schools, that's not going to change for you, but the amount of money that you're going to get is going to change. So that's going to have a tremendous impact year over year on our public school system. And I look back at, I said this last week, when I got here, 42 cents out of every dollar went to education in this state. If you look at that number now, it's probably about 26, 27 cents. And that's both for K-12 and higher ed. So we are slowly chipping away at our traditional system here. And we're gonna start to see the impacts, which we're already seeing with third grade retention and all of these things that we keep pressing down and down on our traditional school system and not giving them the funds to make a change in our children's lives. Again, we talk about in the Republican supermajority how much we care about life and children and families, but these bills don't reflect that. The bills reflect something totally different than what they say, who they are, and what they're doing. So we're fighting for our families. We're trying to make sure that we have adequate funding. We don't want to see the expansion of these programs because we know the end result. We know what's going to happen. So these systems that we believe in, we trust, and we're trying to get it right. So it's disheartening to see some of this legislation keep coming before us from people who say they believe in family and they believe in children. And some of the things that they're doing is just really having an opposite effect on that. With respect to abortion, we passed the bill. Where was that bill at? Lord. It came out of, you take care of it. All right.
Yeah.
I want to say one quick thing about vouchers before we transition to that. You know, when the voucher program was kind of sold to members of the General Assembly, it really was something that was supposed to be a pilot program. In my opinion, and it was pilot in name only because that's what was written in the legislation, it wasn't a true pilot. But we have not even been able to see if vouchers will have a positive impact on our education system and our achievement with our kids. And now we're expanding this program. And it was presented today in the Senate floor as, you know, we're having these issues with schools in a particular county and this is a solution. But we don't know that yet because we have not even had an opportunity to see one school year of vouchers working in this state and to have a true evaluation. When we talk about resources and we talk about being, you know, these stewards of taxpayer dollars, we really have to consider that because we're already losing so much money to all these lawsuits because of these unconstitutional bills that are being passed in this state.
John Ray Clemmons, House Democratic Caucus Chairman. I'll just follow up on the education issue. As Leader Camper said, we were seeing a much smaller percentage of this state's resources going into public education, but what we are seeing is a much larger percentage of that small percentage going into private companies' pockets through voucher programs, through charter schools, and the like, and that's a really dangerous model that directly not only threatens our children and our public school system, but the future economic prosperity of this state. To so fiscally irresponsibly to detour those dollars into private pockets is a dangerous game that we're playing, one with which I strongly disagree. And of course, the TISA funding model blows the door wide open to that scheme. So we continue to worry about that and what those line items are going to look like in this year's budget with regards to direct allocations for charter schools and how that further opens the door to vouchers and private entities profiting off of Tennessee taxpayers' dollars that should be invested in our public schools, traditional public schools. With regards to abortion, most of you probably watched that committee this week at the Population Health Subcommittee in the House. You know, it's completely unfortunate that Tennessee women are treated as less than equal. We should not be in this situation where we have the most restrictive reproductive health care law in the country that does just that. It treats women in this state as less than equal. It directly threatens our healthcare providers and Tennessee families. So in this climate, we've been working together in a sense of bipartisanship to the extent we're able, and come up with this piece of legislation this week that does what I would consider to be the minimum progress in the right direction, that protects the life of mothers and affords our healthcare providers who are simply doing their job a level of protection and eliminates that affirmative defense provision in the current law. As you saw in that committee, the inappropriately named Tennessee Right to Life had the audacity to come before the committee and disrespect the committee and this body and my colleagues across the aisle by making political campaign threats during their testimony. I called them out on it on the spot, and then I was proud to have the Speaker of the House come down and join our committee and reiterate the very same points that I had made with regards to the disrespect that was shown to my colleagues and this body. Making political campaign threats during testimony on a health care bill or any bill in this body is really disrespectful and beyond the pale and inappropriate. So I was glad to see the Speaker come down and do that and show bipartisan support for calling them out on that. It passed I think it's worth noting, that bill passed that subcommittee almost unanimously. Only one person, for unclear reasons, voted against that bill. And now we're heading to the full committee next week. And again, it's a minimum step in the right direction. My position on reproductive health care is clear. I've made it pretty vocal, my position known over the last 9 years, as well as my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus. But, we don't always get what we want, and compromise is necessary to achieve any level of progress. And so in the spirit of bipartisanship and really trying to find some common ground, we supported that legislation, and I hope it does pass. I feel confident about its passage in the House of Representatives. I can't speak to the Senate, but we will continue working together to try to do what's right for women, for families, and for healthcare providers across the state of Tennessee who should have never been placed in this position to begin with. This is a conversation, of course, that should have been had before we ever passed that bill, that trigger bill a few years ago. But that's where we find ourselves. So anybody have any questions about anything going on?
There
Go ahead.
seems to be a little bit of negotiation or conversation in that some of these metro bills designed to cut the size of the council and deal with the tax structure and so forth for the city center, those might be able to go away if the council agrees to allow the RNC to come in at some future time. What are your thoughts on that? Even maybe holding the event in the new stadium, the Dome Titan Stadium. It's they're rid of it.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. The RNC is not even discussing its next convention after the next convention. I mean, so if we're talking about that here, I think that'd be pretty presumptuous of us to think that just because we're open to the idea means it's actually going to come here. So I don't know to what extent that's a bargaining chip or a discussion topic. That, of course, is up to the RNC at the appropriate time to even entertain that idea or notion. But it also kind of feeds into this false narrative that all of this, reaching into the sports authority, the airport authority, cutting the council in half, talking about eliminating the runoff, talking about threatening the bonding stability of the Metro Music City Center. That's less about trying to get revenge on Nashville than it is trying to take control of Nashville. This is the economic engine of the state of Tennessee. Things are going well in Nashville. We have had good leadership in Nashville for some time, and it has resulted in outstanding economic prosperity, which I might add funds the rest of the state of Tennessee to a large extent. The money generated in this county funds every other county across the state of Tennessee to a large extent. So we seem to be doing pretty well here in Nashville. We have our own issues that we need to be dealing with, but that needs to be dealt with down in the Metro Courthouse, and they're doing the best job that they know how. This is about them trying to take control of that. These folks control everything in state government. They control, it's a one-party rule up here, and the one thing they don't control in this state is Nashville. And I think it drives them nuts. And they want to do whatever they can to get control of the money and the power in this city so that they have control of everything from top to bottom. And that's inappropriate. That's overstepping into local government affairs simply for some power grab, and obviously there's financial interest there that they want to have their hands in. So you know, regardless of whether or not there's conversations taking place about what may or may not happen in 6 years or however long down the road, we'll see when the time comes.
You were talking about the voucher bills. Chairman Lundberg has legislation that would even expand the number of people eligible for ESAs, and then Senator Gardenhire also has legislation that would let charter schools have 25% of their students from out of the county. I mean, is this just kind of piling on, or what's your take on this?
Yes, it's valid on. I think they just can't, they're not gonna be satisfied until they, dismantle public school system here in the state of Tennessee. It's something that they believe in nationally. A lot of the national leaders wanna blow up the Department of Education. You got the speaker already talking about not taking federal funds, so that we can use state funds so they can control it. Even if we don't take federal funds, we lose Title I funding and things like that. And they said, well, we can fund those things. They would choose not to, based on their habits, based on their philosophy. I think it's just an all-out attack on public school system here.
Representative Clemmons, you mentioned the common ground on the abortion topic. Outside of the one that was just recently in committee, what are some other bills that you think where you might be able to find some common ground on that topic?
On that specific topic?
To take the rape and incest bill or others that are kind of floating around there that you think might have a chance.
Yeah, so those are obviously focuses of ours. I believe in full access to reproductive health care, first of all. Second, I think, if we're looking for additional ways, an exception for rape and incest would be the next necessary area. There are legislative initiatives in play right now on that topic. The bills that were introduced have some very concerning language in them that requires resolution or amending. But that is an ongoing discussion, topic of discussion for us to try to make a little bit more progress in the right direction to protect young children in the state of Tennessee. I mean, no 12-year-old should be forced to have her uncle's baby or a rapist baby. This is, and a majority of Tennesseans agree with me on that. There should be an exception. And that's, people on both sides of the aisle feel that way. It's just a matter of whether or not we can get enough to agree with us on that and eliminate some of those ridiculous requirements that are harmful regarding police reports and things like that.
In like the last week or two, there's been situations where Republican lawmakers have really called out some of the freshman lawmakers for doing things. Representative Pearson for wearing his attire last week, and then Representative Justin Jones also was told apparently that he wouldn't get it seconded on some of his bills. Do you think that they're sort of targeting this younger group of legislators? Or do you think that this is something that you all face also, Republicans sort of threatening to not hear your bills and just coming off of things that really don't have to do with things on the floor?
Yeah, they do threaten our second our bills. Long before the young ones got here. Well, this thing with Representative Pearson, the speaker had already granted him access to that floor in the dashiki that he actually had on. So the speaker, who is decides decorum, it's on his watches. He has the wherewithal to decide what that looks like. Had already said, we're gonna swear you in the will on this floor. He could have made a choice then and said, well, go get a suit and tie and then you can come back. He could have said, well, we can swear you in front of Samson Keeble or downstairs. He decided to let that young man on the floor. And not only did he decide to let him on the floor to be sworn in his dashiki, he allowed him to speak from the well. When we sworn in, we signed a paper and sit down. Okay, so the speaker had already made a conscious decision. And for another member to, you know, for whatever reason he felt he needed to make this decision, to make light of it, and he's right, laws did check us all. But to compare, I forgot my tie because I was in a hurry, to someone wearing a dashiki in honor of their ancestry because they made it to, you know, the state representative is two different things. And so, you know, I had a conversation with the speaker that day and the member you're talking about that day as well. So I don't know if there's this all-out let's pick on the young ones. I'm not saying that. But I think we have put that to rest to some degree. But the speaker had already decided it was okay for him to be there. And, you know, and he allowed him to get sworn in, make some statements, and had a whole conversation about, you know, when you come back on Monday, which he did, he had on his dashiki and his jacket. So it's you know, we put that to rest. Now with respect to, what was the other one, Representative Jones?
Yeah, Representative Jones, I guess he was questioning a little too much and was told that because of
in government operations.
I can speak to that a little bit. I don't think that's specifically necessarily targeted at Representative Jones. I mean, we all had our bills killed or wiped off an entire calendar simply for asking questions in a previous committee. That's an unfortunate way to do business up here. It creates a very hostile kind of climate when, if you feel like you can't ask fair questions of a department and about their conduct, as Representative Jones did, and he had every right to do that. In that's a government operations hearing. They're before the government operations committee for exactly that purpose. And so he asked questions just because they didn't agree with them. They threatened to not give him a motion or a second, I think is what I heard. But, you know, they've done the same to me for about 9 years now. I know Representative Mitchell's had his share. I mean, they kill our bills for sport up here. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily targeted him specifically. But look, at the end of the day, Leader Camper and I, we got our members' backs. Not every member would handle things necessarily the way I would handle them. Leader Camper may not agree with the way I do things, but we have each other's back. We are a strong, united caucus, and we're proud to support each and every one of our members. And I'll just add, with regard to the speaker and the attire, there is no formal House rule for attire. The speaker is in charge. He may issue rules with regard to decorum, but by allowing him on the floor and allowing him to be sworn in, he de facto allowed that. So he didn't break a rule in place. And so it's unfortunate that it became such a big deal when he was just, I think, you know, showing respect to his heritage.
No, Chris?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Everybody.